Hi everyone, welcome again. This is Business is Personal. I'm Dr. Corrie, and together with my guests Gordon and Hammad, we're going to talk about agile teams. Before we begin, I want you guys to just spend 30 seconds and introduce yourselves, a little bit about your background and where you are now in your experience with agile. Go ahead.
Sure. Hello, I'm Hammad, and I'm a human-centered designer. I've been doing that for the last 20 years at the intersection of design, technology, and business. I started my career in technology innovation before moving to digital agency, running my own agency for 10 years and startups, and then eventually landing in Big Four consulting, and now as head of digital products and solutions for Accenture here in Dubai.
Brilliant, welcome. Gordon?
Hi there, I'm Gordon Suttie. I'm a director at EY. My background is in startups, in SIs, and now in management consulting. So I've been working in this space for now 15 years or more. So yeah.
Brilliant. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is not a one-on-one on Agile. We're not going to explain to you all of the terminology, whether you call it Agile or Scrum or development team or squad or tribe, doesn't matter. It's all basically the same. There's small teams that make up larger teams, and those teams are meant to have short-term, maybe a year to 18 months of work on particular projects, and then they have 1 week to 3 week sprints on smaller projects that make up the larger project, right? So the reason that we're talking about this today is because there's still pretty strong failure rates in terms of deliverables and timelines and clients. So clients are still frustrated by the industry of squads or the industry of agile teams, and what's being provided is not yet what we would say giving us predictable profitability. So I want to hear from you guys what makes a really good, successful agile team, and where are the stress points, where are the pain points for those teams?
Well, I would start with the fact that I don't think agile is any one defined thing.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about it in an engineering context, then there's multiple methodologies all within the Agile banner. Okay, so if you talk about it from the Agile manifesto at the very start, then the people that wrote that, some did extreme programming, others were doing Scrum, and there's other methodologies that are encompassed on it since then. So it means very different things to different people. The fact that we were even discussing there all the different terms that could be used, squads and tribes and everything else. So I think there isn't, with lack of clear definition and understanding of what it is, then how can you expect people to come in dynamically and work together in a consistent way if we can't be clear on how that interaction should work? So it needs strong leadership to define that right from the start. When forming this agile team, I'm going to say, well, we're going to use this methodology. Who's actually had experience of working in that way before? Right. You need a large proportion, more than 50%, of actually successfully having used it before to be that catalyst to get other people to successfully use it.
Okay,
so you can bring people in.
Then let's work on a definition. What is the definition you use for agile? For me, I use project-based small team of specialists with flat organizational structure. Okay. Self-organized, small, project-based. What do you guys use?
Yeah, I guess I definitely lean to this sort of self-organized and self-managing, self-governing concept. I'm very much a believer in agile being, well, in its nature, the word, right? It allows for flexibility and change inherently, but it has rules, guidance, and support mechanisms to allow that to be done successfully.
Sure.
So and we'll get to that again in a minute, why agile does and doesn't work. But I think one of the key components that doesn't sort of bubble up to the top in the phrasing is actually it's all about learning. And learning is through both success and failure. And the ability to learn within a team and to support that learning process is actually fundamental to the core of agile. So self-governing and learning, ability to change, and to have well-structured support mechanisms to allow that to work in a sort of coherent manner.
Okay, so that sounds to me like what you would say are contributors to success. Okay, I want more specifics on that in a minute, but tell me first of all, what are the contributors to failure? What do you see bringing those teams down?
Okay, at the risk of going on again, inconsistency is probably the biggest one. And I think it was something I was reading into what Gordon was saying, which is, when you have whichever one of the flavors of methodology you pick, is actually within each one, they can be successful. What I often find is leading to lack of success or failure is when you break that mold all too easily. So actually, delivering Agile inconsistently or in a fractured manner leads to failure. And I see that probably is the most common breakdown of an Agile team, is when it's whether you pick Scrum or Extreme Programming or adapting Agile into a different industry. But as soon as you try and change it all because it suits you, then it fails. That for me is probably the biggest one.
Gordon?
For many years, I've seen one of the biggest issues on projects that are using Agile failing is the very fact that the initial contract that's established between the supplier, vendor, and the client is actually not Agile friendly. And what makes it not Agile friendly? Well, it actually probably has a very defined list of deliverables, a very tightly defined timescale. It's constrained on the resourcing and the budget, and you have all these things that are locked down. So you have Agile in the small rather than Agile in the large. The amount that you can actually adapt and change is very small. So that's the main thing. It's about adaptability, learning to that point that Hammad just made. From if we're using a Scrum terminology, because that's the one that probably most people are really meaning when they're talking about Agile within a business delivery context. You're having a sprint that's lasting maybe 2 weeks. If you don't learn from what happened in that 2 weeks, the learning point, and change what you're going to do in the next 2 weeks, then you're not really being Agile. If you're then just iterating by saying we're doing these things every 2 weeks, but everything that we're going to do is determined in a contract, and we're going to do this in each subsequent 2 weeks, and it doesn't change because there's no learning from earlier sprints, then you're not Agile. You're using the terminology, you're having stand-ups, you're doing showcases, you might even do retrospectives, but you're not really learning from the retrospectives. And so these things are gone into general business vernacular, but they're not being true to really why they exist. It's ceremony.
I see exactly the same thing. And not surprisingly, my podcast is called Business is Personal. So for me, what really breaks down is the fact that these are people. And so very often, especially when we're forming new Agile teams, we're throwing them into a client for the first time or even for the third time. What it amounts to is you take tremendously talented people, but from everywhere else, and you expect them to act very, very well, and it turns out that they're just people. Right? And that becomes very disappointing for us because we want people to behave like machines, and people aren't machines. # humans, not resources, right? So what it amounts to is an experiment not unlike taking all of the expert members of an F1 pit crew, but from different pit crews, and throwing them onto one pit crew and then saying, okay, now pit the car, right? They're amazing in their teams where they have experience, they know what everybody else is doing, they can anticipate everyone else's behavior, but when they're on a new team, even with all of their expertise and all their specialties, they fall apart.
They would also fall apart if the car changed.
That's
so you can take a really great team, a high-performing team that's really got its stuff together, and it's been doing really well, depending on what metrics you use to track their performance in terms of number of points being delivered per sprint, and you can see that metric growing over time, because at the start of the project, then it's not going to be as high performance as it is once it finds its flow and it gets there.
That's exactly right.
But then you put it into a different project with different technologies, different outcomes being required, it's not going to perform the same way. So you can't even take the metrics from how they were performing before. That's like changing the car.
That's exactly right.
I think that's very true. The piece about time and improvement over time is very true. And that's another one of the sort of big success and failure points, is it's actually, do you even allow enough time for success to manifest?
Yes, that's right.
So actually in the early stages where you're building momentum, the teaming point is absolutely crucial, as you say, because if it is a new team and the dynamics are new, you've got to reestablish that.
That's right.
It's trust. A lot of it is trust. It's communication. It's interdependency. It's allowing space and freedom for the talents that you have to be able to do their jobs. So there has to be a sort of gestation period where some of that comes to life, and you learn through that process what's going to work. Then the momentum picks up. And then you start to, really reap the benefits, and that promise of what Agile can do potentially can start coming to fruition. But what happens, often related to contracting or the way projects or sort of objectives were set out at the beginning, is there's a stakeholder or stakeholders somewhere who are like, this isn't working.
Yeah.
We didn't get the outcome after sprint 1. Or, oh, we didn't deliver in sprint 2. And suddenly everyone needs to change the game again.
Yeah, sure.
So you don't allow for Agile to kind of, deliver on its potential.
Right.
And it's a risky one, right? Because what if it doesn't?
Like,
but when's that stopping point?
That's an interpersonal communications issue. So when you have a team which is supposed to be agile, supposed to be self-governing, supposed to be self-monitoring, right? Governed by a command and control, top-down hierarchical system saying, hey, not only do we need these deliverables by these dates, but we want you to use these methodologies, then that's when the agile team is going to go, no, that's not part of the deal. So there's that kind of, let's say, pressure creep onto the team itself from the hierarchy, whether it's a client or an internal team. And then there's also the scope creep that I see from within agile teams where they start to deliver things that were not asked for or develop things that are like, parts of expertise that they had in the past or products that they had produced in the past that are kind of easy flow for them, but not really a part of this particular project.
Yeah. Well, that's when the wider stakeholders are then taking advantage of this agile label to say, well, we can throw anything new at you and you're going to deal with it. And so then that's abused. And that's actually not being truthful to what that contract is between, I'm not talking now the kind of the legal contract for the engagement, but that contract between the team and the wider business.
Right.
In terms of saying it isn't that you can ask for anything and change it every single day.
Right.
Agile doesn't just mean fast and we'll change everything as we feel like it.
Right.
It's a very specific methodology for delivering with a higher degree of consistency, where it's a learning process, and it's one which is de-risking a delivery because it's showing progress on a frequent basis.
Right.
What it can't be abused is just throwing random things into it and having the team feel that they need to adjust to that.
Yeah, that's
and that comes from the experience of the team, knowing that it isn't a methodology that's going to allow you to adapt with unlimited change.
Yeah, that's right.
Unlimited frequency. I mean, that's just called chaos. You may be calling it agile, and that's been abused by other leaders.
So what are the success factors? What do you think goes into having those teams perform well from the client side, from the supplier side, and from the team side?
I think we're already hearing a few things bubbled up, right? So definitely the kind of mode of engagement, right? So actually everybody being clear from the beginning what the expectations are going to be, how we're going to mobilize, how we're going to team, and how we're going to measure success, right? So actually the contract of working together is clear from the start, right? So when that's not there, no wonder people are going to start finding gaps or miss expectations, because that's definitely one. I think for me, it absolutely has to be instilling the culture of learning and coaching, which is often one of the biggest missing pieces.
Right.
So normally Agile is this machine and it's going to deliver fast and allow for change and all of that. But actually, the Agile coach is the key role, and I often find it's the missing role. Because we'll have a Scrum Master in Scrum, or we'll have an Agile project manager, and Agile isn't really about projects and deliverables, etc. So I think that missing culture of learning and coaching is a key success factor, because when you have that, you facilitate all of those other outcomes that you expected.
Sure.
And then there's other things probably more at a technical level of the skill set to be able to work within it, but those are two big starting points.
Yeah, the people and culture.
Yeah.
Gordon, would you agree?
I would agree with that. I think it's also about top-down sponsorship of that. That's really making sure there's that buy-in from the business. And again, the artifact of the contract, let's turn it what it should be. So that's about having focus on outcomes and value rather than features and functions and deliverables. So it's the language has got to change. And as soon as you start seeing committed features and functions and deliverables, then you're not really setting yourself up for success. So what should you set yourself up for success? Well, we want to talk about what is it the business is trying to achieve? What do the outcomes look like? How would you measure that? If you saw that in the future, how would you actually measure that you've made a step towards that? And that's what we can track, rather than the delivery of some functionality.
Okay, so for CEOs and COOs are out there that are forming agile teams within your corporate communities, or you're bringing them in as outside supply, Here's the secrets of success. Focus on outcomes and deliverables, not on features and functions, and focus on people and culture, be empowering, and allow those agile teams to have a little bit of time of learning during the first few sprints in order to figure out how they work well together so that they can deliver to you. Don't freak out on the first 3 waves, you know what I mean? Okay.
Definitely.
Now, on the people and culture thing, one of the things that I've found very interesting getting into Agile, I don't have 10 years or 20 years of experience in Agile from a development perspective, but I have a lot of multi-industry experience. So I see the same kinds of expertise that we're using in Agile coming from other industries. So, for example, the entertainment industry, and if we were to look at a tour as a kind of project, the tour crew would be operating together for 18 months to 2 years. It's a specific project. Each concert can be considered a sprint. Each country can be considered a wave. And then they continue to deliver. And there's some special things that happen in each concert or in each country that don't happen in other concerts or other countries. But each member of the team is a specialist.
Yeah.
And they're brought on from other tours, from other concerts, from other bands in order to produce that particular tour. So it's not that the Agile concept is new. The Agile concept has been the bedrock of other industries, and its import into development is new. And now people are taking the language of Accenture and McKinsey and others to say, hey, listen, can we use this in legal? Can we use this in branding communications? And so other industries are starting to use the same sort of concepts. But we have examples, industrial examples from other industries outside of development where we can take the people and culture bit. So one of the things that I've been pushing for Agile development is using psychometrics for determining the nature of the team, for determining the pressure points of the team so that those 8 to 12 to 15 to 30 people will know where their stress points are and how they're going to be able to communicate well with each other, and then how to deal with it when they hit those stress points and they're not communicating well with each other. So have you guys used psychometrics, or how important do you think that is in the future of building Agile?
It's a very good point, and I think it's a really interesting space and science to apply to a problem like that, right? Because I think, as you said earlier, there's a tension that's now mounting in industry that is Agile working, is it delivering, and is it being successful? Right. So what can we do to shift those odds in our favors? And I think looking at a different set of metrics like psychometrics and human profile and behaviors could be a different way to put it, rather than have we got the skill sets, have we got the software, have we got the landscape. So actually focusing more on the teaming element to say, how are we getting that right? So that's a really good way of doing it. I definitely haven't done it at a psychometric level. I think the closest example I would give is we've definitely looked at it from a sort of high-performing and building high-performing teams perspective. I think there's some really great methodology, but also just some good learning and even books around this, which is really about getting the teams to commit to the team. You know, because a lot of teams have multiple team roles. Right. So when you form an Agile team, and it could be, as you say, in any industry, but those people have probably come from another place. Right. And they belong to another culture or another community, or in Agile terms, a guild or a tribe or a squad.
That's right.
Right. And actually, when you form that squad team to go and deliver on something, where's that loyalty really coming from? You know, are they bringing politics into the situation? Well, I'm the marketing rep on the squad, but I'm looking after the marketing department, which is my real team. Right. Or I'm the developer on this project, but really I'm from the tech guys, and so I'm looking after our integrity. So actually that squad is already kind of infused with a lack of priorities. So actually we worked on some stuff where it's really about separate to delivery work, focusing on getting teams to understand that this is your team. Everyone's in the team. That's right. And how do you get that team working at optimum effect? Commitment to that particular team. That's right. So that's worked really well. Exactly. As a concept. And I think if you bring psychometrics into that, you could enhance that even further. Absolutely. So if you're on a team or leading a team, if you're at the tribe level or you're a product owner, what you need to be concentrating on is oxytocin. Get the commitment from your team, get the loyalty from your team, and then you'll get the best out of them. Gordon, what do you think?
Yeah, it's something I've been looking at actually. I was inspired by what Ray Dalio was doing in his book on principles, which is an awesome book. But in that, one of the things that he's talking about is actually for everyone actually doing their psychometric testing and having an equivalent of their own personal baseball card. Exactly. And so then it's like, so I'm meeting somebody for the first time, we're forming a team, I need to know how they work and operate, so I can actually consciously think about that when I'm interacting with them. So as that team's being formed and actually establishing, then I've got that as a reminder as to, you know, how they're going to interact, you know, what motivates them, how, you know, what I need to consider about getting the best from them. So, and I think it's not just the team itself or the squad and the Agile team, it's really setting up that program or team working within a project. You need to really look at all the other stakeholders as well, because it is modes of communication, as I think you're referring to. So, you know, how does that team collectively then manage all of its stakeholders?
That's right.
Understanding that in the wider organization, I think is important.
So for that, then the key, the pivot point there would be the product owner, or the project manager, or whatever you want to call them, the person that's the liaison between the client and the vendor and the team themselves. That person's communication skills have to be off the charts. Right,
they do, but I mean, I'm a big advocate of the whole team representing their own work.
Fair.
So when we do showcases, it's not just somebody talking on behalf of the team. The team actually themselves actually present their own piece of the deliverable, because they're the best person to represent the work that's been done. So yes, on a, you know, it's different levels, but I would definitely say that it's the wider team itself that does need to consider that as well. They're all engaging with the client.
And that's how you build collective ownership.
Ownership,
right?
yeah.
That's right.
That's the buy.
That's right. But the macro concern here is communication. Okay, so from my reading, my research is that the contributors to the success of teams really is oxytocin among the team, internal locus of control among the members of the team. Each of them has to know that they have a say of control in what happens to their lives. They have to know that they're contributors and not victims of their lives. They have to have an intrinsic motivation. Something has to come from inside rather than carrots and sticks from outside, because that just makes donkeys out of all of us. So those are big. And then high EQ. And high EQ is a massive contributor of success. And I think one of the reasons why it's working well in some other industries other than development is that developers tend to be a little lower on the EQ scale. So and one of the great pieces of research that's come out of MIT recently is that Agile teams that have more females on them perform better.
So diversity, definitely.
Yes,
and not
absolutely.
just from, you know, the male-female thing, but you know, that the real winning
experience,
team,
industry,
you know, all of those.
It forces a higher EQ when there's diversity. So international diversity, like multi-ethnic, multi-religious, multilingual, which creates communication challenges, but that kind of diversity, and of course gender balance, creates a kind of diversity that forces people to become more emotionally aware. And then that creates better forms of communication, because it's more conscious communication rather than assumed communication. There's fewer unspoken, unmet expectations.
Well, it's when you're looking at any given task that the team are working on in a sprint, and then there's that conversation around when they're doing their estimation, like how difficult do we think this thing is? If you don't have the diversity in skills, experience and background, and all the other factors you just mentioned, then you're not getting different points of view. If everybody's all worked on the same projects in the same industry doing the same thing, then they're not really bringing anything new. So you've got many people around the table who just have different opinions, but with the same set of experiences. What you then have with the diversity is you're bringing completely different points of view, and it's the discussion that comes from those different background skills and experiences that actually gets into a better understanding of the task that they're about to take on. And if that doesn't exist, then you're not really considering all the factors around doing that task.
It's key, because you're so right, because what ends up happening often on task estimation of any format, whether it's in Agile, whether it's in planning or strategy, is, you know, the senior guys will do the planning and they will do the estimation. I know how long this takes to do, or I know how long I'm going to assign on time or budget or resources. And so the sort of framework of delivery and production is based on experience. But actually, the people who are tasked to undertake the work don't have that experience, and they're going to work at different paces. They're going to have the day-to-day communication challenge. So the theory of Agile is supposed to empower the team to make that collective estimation of effort, deliverability, cadence, whatever it is. And that way, as a community in the squad, you're saying, this is what we can commit to. Right. Whereas when you take that away from the team and say, right, the technical leader or the product owner or the scrum master is going to sort of drive that because they've got the experience to help shape it or do it quickly. It breaks down again. So straight away what happens is Agile starts to break down because there's no longer trust. The team becomes a pocket and they're like, well, we've been told we've got to get this done in 5 days. It's never going to be possible. So they kind of start the work knowing that they didn't buy into what they've been asked to do.
Do you think it's really practical then to bring the team themselves into the estimation process? That creates a lot more voices, right?
It does. And I think, again, what I've seen is if you spend some time in the early sprints, giving a bit more space and freedom to that for that to happen. Again, self-organizing team, they will find a way to get through that process quicker. Again, actually, engineering teams in particular, they don't actually like to spend time doing that stuff.
Right, sure.
So if you give them that as a mandate, they will find a way to get through it quickly because they want to find an efficient way through that.
Yeah, that's right.
So it does work when you give them the time.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's essential.
Gordon, you see the same?
Yeah, it's essential that the team that's doing the work is the one that estimates the work. I think I've had cases in the past where when that exercise has been done, then the leadership was saying, well, this project's going to be taking 6 months. But when we actually were getting requirements coming in over the previous 2, 3, 4 weeks, we actually had the team estimate the entire, at the large level, not the detailed level that you do as you go into the specific sprint, then it looked like a 1.5 years worth of work.
Right.
And, you need to know that early on, that this is not a 6-month project. If this is a 1.5 years worth of work, then you've got some real prioritization conversations you're going to have to say what is most important to have at 6 months, because you can't have all of that. Or you're standing up a significantly multiple teams, a larger program, if the work can then be divided and it makes sense to do so. So you've got a whole bunch more planning to do to still get that done within 6 months. But as they say, you can't, nine ladies can't make a baby in 1 month.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's that same kind of thing.
So, okay. CEOs, private sector CEOs out there looking for a piece of advice. They want to do digital transformation in their organizations, let's say 2,000 to 10,000 people. Bottom line, should they redevelop their IT department, or should they rent teams from consultancies? Because that's the decision that they're making. That's what my clients are making, those decisions.
So I think, well, we're all from consulting in one form or another. I think there's a good case for taking high-performing agile teams from outside your organization if there's no experience inside the organization. So, and that is the role of any third-party advisor, consultant, SI, whatever. You're bringing in an experience that you don't have. But that's not the long-term answer.
Right.
The long-term answer for creating an agile organization is to invest in a program within your own business. So you've actually got a chance of actually not just having that come in and then leave at the end of whatever time period. You want to actually do capability build. IT organizations are interesting as well. I don't think necessarily everybody needs to be agile. There are certain systems and certain technologies that don't lend themselves to actually doing agile delivery on. So you need to have the right method for the right system and process change. So there are different frameworks for examining that. I'm quite a fan of the PACE layer framework, which really looks at systems of record, systems of differentiation, and systems of innovation. And Agile's in that innovation space because you're dealing with a lot of unknowns. When you're dealing with a lot more knowns, you can do a lot more upfront planning, and then you've got this thing in the middle, which is probably a hybrid of both. So it's really looking at that and choosing the right method for the right.
Well, there are some new vendors of squads or teams in the market that are offering retain to hire. So you can use the team for 18 months, 2 years, and then after, if you want to just transfer them over and keep them, you can do that.
That's a good option as well. It's all about having that expertise come into the organization. Trying to do it from training, then you don't have the culture of Agile. You have the ceremony of Agile and the words of Agile, but you don't actually have that culture and understanding.
That's right.
And so growing from a zero base is very, very hard. It's about bringing in some expertise, whichever method of using consultancy or that contract to hire model. Anything's good. And the purpose is getting enough people who have done it before, that have made it work, that can bring other people on board and scale it from there.
And Hammad, your final advice for?
Yeah, sure. I think the only thing I'll add to that, because I think these are all really, these are points that resonate with whatever I've seen. I think because I've come into management consulting from an unconventional pathway, I kind of take consulting in a different mindset as well.
Right.
And so one of the personal success criteria for me in a consulting engagement or an account is, have we built and sustained capability for the client to take on?
Good.
So rather than it being, okay, we're the agile team to hire, we're going to be here forever, you know, we'll never leave, which is definitely a mindset that exists.
Yeah.
It's more about, can we come in, can we empower, can we coach, train, learn, prove, all of those things, and set them up for success, and they'll carry that forward.
Right.
And whenever we've been able to do that, to whatever degree, and you move on to the next thing, that's a great success. And if that means we exit the client, then that was the right thing to do. If that means we shift our attention to elsewhere in that client because there's other things that we can support them with, so be it.
Right.
But to lock on to, no, but you know, just rent it from us because we're great at that. I don't think that works.
Right.
And I think that's definitely what we're seeing change in
absolutely.
their minds of buying, like in consulting buying.
Yep.
I don't think people want that so much now.
Good. So industry trends for the future in Agile: retain to hire, psychometrics for the formation and the maintenance of teams, and definitely clear deliverables and clear communication. Those are the big topics on Agile. You agree with me?
Excellent.
Perfect.
Sounds good to
Excellent.
me.
Thank you so much, guys,
Pleasure.
for
It's good
being
to
with
be
me
here.
today. This has been really fun.
Absolutely.
See you again.